Chapter 43. Mac woke in the dark, but unable to fall asleep again, tossed and turned until he woke Pascal. "Sorry I drop off, chérie," she said. "I came to bed tonight to help you, but you put me to sleep instead." She wrapped her arms around him and brought her face close to his. "Why don't you tell me what is keeping you awake?" "How do we come back from this?" he despaired. "From what exactly?" Pascal returned. "What have we lost?" "Are you kidding?" Mac replied, aghast. "For a start, we've lost so much time. We never have enough time to even keep up with all that's needed on the fields and polytunnels. And we've lost all of today fighting the fire. And on top of that..." "Calme-toi," Pascal soothed, stroking his forehead. "Being the leader is no good for you. You worry too much, especially about the details." "But who else will?" began Mac. And again Pascal silenced him. "Do you know what we need most from you?" "Do you, Mac?" She crinkled her nose inquiringly. "Calmness, confidence." She paused for emphasis. "And leadership." "You're good at this stuff, Pascal, at seeing the brass tacks. But how can I ever do that? I don't feel calm and confident. I'd be conning everybody if I told them I was." "Then con them if you must," Pascal returned. "But I don't think you will have to." Mac sat up, shaking his head. "They'll see through me as soon as someone asks, 'What are we going to do now?'" "And why don't you know the answer to that, eh? You did this morning." Mac began to nod in agreement, but then shook his head again. "But don't you get what's happened today? Don't you see what we've lost?" "Not quite. Why don't you tell me?" "That greenhouse was smashed to pieces, along with everything in it. We don't have a second one. And even if we did, Daz and Carol have been spending almost all of their time in there, growing the seedlings we were going to be planting out next, and things like tomatoes that were ready for permanent planting in a tunnel." Pascal stroked his arm. "All gone. Carol was heartbroken. She couldn't bring herself to tell me what we'd lost. I'll find out tomorrow, I suppose. All the same, it's weeks of our work lost and about 3 weeks of growing season we'll never get back." Pascal nodded for him to continue. "There is more, n'est-ce pas? We've lost the entire wood store. Not just firewood, but all the timber for building, for repairs, for all the projects lined up. It took weeks to bring all that in from the surrounding farms." "Have we lost it all?" Pascal asked. "Pretty much. There's some in the workshop being worked on, and what we didn't use on the polytunnels and compost bins, that's still nearby. And that big pile of sleepers," Pascal added. "Yeah, all right, but all the same, we lost most of it. And we lost a polytunnel, crushed by a diesel drum." "Wasn't it half a polytunnel?" Pascal quizzed, "which you've already repaired? And how many of them survived?" "All right, I get the message. We're lucky. We lost only one, and the others were untouched. Half of one," Pascal corrected. "But there's still all the timber and firewood and the greenhouse. And you know how we got them there, don't you? With all the petrol and diesel we found. And most of that blew up." "Sure, honey. Perhaps we have to travel a little further to find more next time." "We haven't got anyone to spare to do that. We're already working dawn to dusk. I mean, there wasn't any time even to do the watering tonight." Mac's voice rose as his hands expressed his frustration. "Honey, you have been working everybody too hard. Except Ashanti," she rolled her eyes, "and a few more. Anyway, perhaps it will rain." "But there's so much we need to do," pleaded Mac. "So there is," Pascal agreed. "But some of it will have to wait longer." Mac opened his mouth to object, but Pascal placed her finger on it. "Sleep on it, chérie. Tomorrow you will have a plan for what must be done first. I know you can do it. But don't give me or Tiggy or Bindi any work tomorrow afternoon." "All right," Mac agreed, shrugging in acquiescence. But why? Tomorrow is the perfect time for a party, a celebration, to cheer everyone up after today. Trust me. Thanks, Pascal, Max said, rolling away to lie back down. You're the best. And don't you forget it, Miel, she replied with steel. But I'm not finished with you. I'm going to make sure you fall sound asleep. She lifted the blanket and crawled underneath. On the window, the pattering of rain began to sound. Auntie Tiggy, how did the fire start? Nicola asked, as she set out the bowls and spoons for breakfast porridge on the big table. I'm not certain, sweetie. Perhaps the fire by the compost heap sent some sparks across, Tiggy said in a fatalistic tone. The wind was blowing in that direction. Anyway, what does it matter how it started? It's what it destroyed that will tip us. Never mind. Let's do what we can. She busied herself around the kitchen, and Nicola knew not to continue. Morning, boys and girls, Mac began, standing up at the head of the table. Some faces were missing, and those that were present wore resigned, beaten expressions of defeat. What are you so chirpy about? Alex snapped. Were you on a cloud yesterday? We just had a fire that wiped out a month's work. We might as well give up now. Look how easily we can lose everything we've worked our nuts off for. It's even worse than we thought last night, Bindi said, her head down, in a voice filled with despair. I didn't think to check last night, but most of the sheep got out. They probably panicked and ran at the barrier. It's down at its weakest point, that trellis section. I told you that wouldn't be strong enough, Cynthia shouted. You should have fixed it weeks ago. Bindi's head dropped as others added to the recriminations. What are we going to use for meat if the hunters don't catch anything? Now there's no point in trying to find a ram. We can forget any ideas of lamb chops. Bindi lifted her head again. They haven't all run away. I noticed 2 still in the pen, and I penned them back in. 2? Alex mocked. Big deal. How long will they last us? Pointless. Longer than none would last us, retorted Bindi, and we can still catch fish. No, we can't, Tiggy countered, shaking her head. The nets went up, along with everything else in the outhouse. Cries of dismay rang around the room. I never wanted them kept in there, Cynthia shouted out. You never listen to me. She pointed her finger aggressively at Pet and Ashanti. You'll do anything to avoid walking a few extra yards, you idle cows. Yeah, Jessie jumped in. Idle is what they are. When we start running short of food, they should be the ones doing without. What good will that do? Colin muttered. We'll all be hungry again soon enough. We're no better off than before we all left Lancaster. No better off than when we had Ricky. That's more than enough of that negative crap, Max snapped. Don't let me catch anybody else talking like that again, or else. He banged his fist on the table, making mugs and plates rattle and faces lift from the floor. A few toffs exchanged surprised glances at Mac's tone. How else should we talk? Ashanti's words were laced with sarcasm. There's no sugarcoating the mess we're in. We're finished. Then leave, if it's so hopeless here. See if the Danes will take you. Mac paused, looking directly at her. Didn't think so. Now be quiet and listen. We're not giving up. I haven't quite figured all the details yet, but we're going to make this work out. He paused, directing a meaningful nod at Pascal, who smiled back. Chapter 44. First, is there anything else we've lost? Max scanned the room, eyebrows raised. Linda put her hand up. Yes, there is. James and Lenny have badly burned their hands putting out the fires last night. I've got them in the clinic now, cleaning and dressing them, but they won't be able to work for, I'm not sure how long. Max scratched his head, wearing a pained expression. What about driving? Can they do that? Linda shook her head. Nothing. They can't use their hands at all. They'll heal much quicker if they keep them dressed and rested. I'll have to put both hands in slings. Mac shook his head. Damn, that rules out one idea I woke up with. Carol stood up. We lost the whole greenhouse and everything in it, Mac. All the glass is smashed. We can't salvage anything from it. I know where there's another one, Ali chipped in. At that posh house me and Linda found. It might as well be on the moon, a voice called out. It would take fuel we don't have to drive out there and bring it back. It's a shame we can't just borrow from the money markets like Prudence Brown, Tiggy joked. Nobody laughed. She sat back, deflated. It's not just the greenhouse, though, Carol continued. It's what was in it. There were plants we'd grown from seed on day one. I mean, when Daz got us started. Most were ready for planting out, into their permanent beds, or in the fields. If only we'd done it yesterday, she tailed off. All those plants lost. We would have been eating some of them in as little as 6 weeks. Pascal stood up. Can you replant them all? Do you still have the seeds? Carol thought a moment. Most of them, I think. I'll have to check on a few of the rarer ones, but yes, for most. Not sure if we've got enough trays made up, but we've got enough compost. I can make up some trays if you need, Colin said. I'm not as quick as Lenny yet, but I know how to. If you haven't a different job for me, that is, he looked at Mac. Mac nodded thoughtfully as he rubbed his chin. His face screwed up as if calculating an algebraic formula. All right, listen up, everybody. This is what we're going to do. He listed the farm's new priorities that he'd woken up with and divided them into tasks for each team. Then he called over Tomo, Cynthia, and the other team leaders. He'd seen puzzled looks on their faces as the jobs they'd seen as essential were put to one side. Save your questions for later tonight, Mac opened, and work with me on this. Even if you can't see it. No problem, boss, Tomo answered, but others looked unconvinced. I've got loads of questions, Mac, and I don't mind waiting for answers, but Alex began. Mac nodded at him to continue. All the work we've been breaking our backs on, the vegetables and that, are we just leaving them to go to waste? Course not, Mac answered. We need those vegetables we didn't lose, even more than before, and we'll have to tighten our belts for a little longer. But we couldn't have kept that pace up all year. We've got to work out what's necessary and what isn't. We'll have a better idea after, say, a week. Your party, along with Carol, are to decide which vegetable garden jobs are the most important and what you can manage today. But we don't know, Alex protested, a touch of panic in his voice. Daz tells us what he needs doing, and we just do it. If Daz comes over today, that's great. Check it out with him. If he doesn't, then you two figure it out. You've been doing the job for weeks. You can do it. Alex nodded agreement. All right, he said uncertainly. As for the other work parties, Mac turned to the other leaders. Forget about those jobs you would have done today. Just concentrate on these new jobs, replacing all the timber, firewood and fuel. Let me get this straight, Mac, Cynthia asked. We're going to use the last of our fuel to go exploring distant farms and villages, hoping we'll find more fuel. Mac nodded. That will use up all we've got, unless we find more quickly. That's our emergency reserve. What if there's another emergency and it's all gone? We'll deal with it, just like we dealt with the last one. If it happens. Cynthia shook her head doubtfully. Look, all of you, Mac said firmly. Life is going to be disasters and problems from now on, which we'll have to manage ourselves. There's no insurance payout coming, no hospital to be taken to, no ambulances or fire engines. Heads nodded. And there are some things, some materials we absolutely must have. Gas and fuel are some of those. And wood? Questioned Cynthia. Do we need that as much as fuel? Last time we found the two together, remember? And heaps of other valuables. Guns, tools, books. Go on, get off on the road. Daylight's a-wasting. Carol returned from the Dane farm where she'd got to fetch Daz. Sorry, Mac. Gary told him he couldn't come today because they needed him. Perfect, Mac snapped. Can't they see we're desperate? What does Gary need him so much for? Dunno. He didn't say, and Daz walked away when I asked him. Didn't even give me a kiss. Mac watched the scavenging teams drive away. Because of injuries and rearranged priorities, some of the partnerships had to be changed. As the parties began leaving the kitchen to begin the day's work, 3 who'd been hissing and whispering among themselves earlier made no move to start. Mac turned to them, wearing a weary, questioning look. Look, I'm not going all that way with half-screw on my own, said Mandeep, hands on hips, her face defiant. And that's final. Bindi will come with me, won't you, Binds? Sure, Bindi said, equally resolute. Toff stopped at the door to listen to the argument. Look, said Mac, exasperated, we don't need 3 people on this job. 2 people can pull in those nets that we left in the river overnight. 3's a waste. I'm not going with him, Mandeep repeated, even louder. All right, Mac yelled. Somebody else then. Who'll do it? No one moved or spoke. Mac scanned the women's faces. He saw defiance, fear, even anger. There was something he wasn't reading. Can't we even pull together on this, he asked. After a pause, Bindi stepped out. I'll go instead of half-screw, she said. The other women patted her on the back and hugged her approvingly. Everyone trooped outside to begin work. I'll get in the water, Bindi said reassuringly to Mandeep as they left. You can stay on the bank. Some leader, half-screw mocked, as Mandeep and Bindi picked up the nets and walked away. Letting a bunch of women tell you what to do. The women's wishes count just as much as ours, Mac faltered. Mac busied himself, helping Alex's work party, then chopping trees intended for firewood from the woods. His thoughts raced, veering from one pole to the other. One minute he told himself to be confident. His decisive plan was the best use of resources. The next he found himself worrying he'd lose the Toff's confidence if the stores of fuel and gas couldn't be replaced. As daylight was fading, he heard the returning Land Rover from the wood. It was the last of the groups seeking fuel to return. Hoping they hadn't also returned empty-handed, he sheathed the axe head and walked back to the hostel. But Tomo and his team's faces told him the answer as he approached them. Sorry, boss, Tomo said. Nothing too impressive. We went to loads of farms and one village, all cleared out long ago, by groups like ours probably. We got some tinned food and camping stoves. With gas, Ali added. Max sighed. Let's get the maps out and tick off where we've been. Everyone else is back. He gestured towards the dining room. Do that quickly, Mac, because you've got a party to take me to, Ali reminded him. Mac hesitated and then said, Forget the maps tonight. Let's eat and drink to all being alive after the fire. Chapter 45. The next day, Mac sent all 3 teams out again, this time to distant farms and villages they'd never visited before. All 3 returned late in the evening, and over the Land Rover's bonnet they reported what they'd found. I feel like Mad Max driving around hunting for petrol, Tomo said. We didn't find any full drums, but we drained loads of cars' tanks to top up our empty ones. And diesel for the Land Rover's tank, added Bindi. Yeah, that's full up again, Tomo agreed. But other than that, it was slim pickings. Any timber? Mac asked hopefully. Yeah, Bindi and Tomo replied in unison. Plenty. Enough to replace what we lost, actually. It's the getting it back here that's the problem. That'll have to wait. Fuel's the priority. Mac spread the map on the table. Let's work out where's left to try tomorrow. I don't think we should take the Land Rover tomorrow, Mac, Tomo said. Like Bindi said, the tank's full. But if we hadn't found some cars to siphon diesel from, we wouldn't have had enough to get us home. We spent ages on it. You see, if it runs out of fuel, it's a pig to get started again. It's not like a petrol engine. Just the quad bikes then, Mac said. That means only 2 teams of 2 can go. Mac felt the tension in the atmosphere as soon as he entered the dining room. He heard whispered comments as he sat down. Look, he's here now. No, don't put it off any longer. Who's going to tell him? I will, Cynthia said. I'll tell him. Just don't you lot go quiet on me when he asks who's on our side. A few nods and no problems followed this. Come on then, Cynthia, Mac opened. Out with it. What's your latest grumble? It's your latest stupid scheme. Wasting the last of our petrol on a wild goose chase and abandoning all our vegetables to wither. We're not doing any of those things. But carry on with your rant anyway. Yes, you bloody are, Cynthia shot back. And we're not putting up with it. Mac raised his eyebrows questioningly. We? Are we? Cynthia turned round, appealing to the room with hands wide. There was a chorus of no, and no, we're not. Mac sat back, hit by the strength of feeling. We can't just sit back while you throw everything away. Alex threw the final punch. Mac was staggered to hear that from Alex, but tried hard to keep his face neutral. He registered who'd sided with Cynthia and Alex. He wasn't surprised to see Tiggy and Ashanti there, nor Carol and Anna. But he was shaken to see Linda and Julie siding with Cynthia. Sitting nearby but a few spaces away from Cynthia's group, wearing pained, conflicted expressions, were Lenny and Colin, with Mandeep and Maria alongside them. Looks about half of you are ganged up against me, Mac said, hurt in his voice. Against us, Pascal corrected firmly, walking past Cynthia to sit next to Mac. Pascal? She called over to where the Frenchwoman was assisting Miriam and Nicole in the kitchen. This time, Ali, you and I are teammates. Mac has my vote, toujours. And it's the useless half, Tomo said mockingly. They should be thanking their lucky stars they're on our farm, not starving on Gary's or somewhere else. Instead, they're trying to take over. Over my dead... We are not on your farm, Tomo, Cynthia snapped. How dare you? We all have a stake. The farm belongs to all of us. We've all worked to build it up. And what's more, Tomo, her voice rose in pitch while her face turned red with anger. While you've been enjoying a nice country drive on the last of our petrol, we've been slaving away in the fields. The fields you, she jabbed her finger aggressively at Mac, are happy to see overgrown with weeds and... Calm down, dear, it's only a commercial, jeered Tomo. Get her an ice pack, somebody. That'll do, Tomo, Mac interrupted. Let her finish what she started. But Cynthia could not. You smart-ass bully boy, roared Cynthia, brushing away Alex's restraining hand. We'll see how you like having to work on Gary's farm while we... What? Tomo shouted back. Do you think you're going to throw us off? You and all the Greenham Common minge-eating army can try, if you like. The room erupted. Cynthia's stool flew back as she shot up, her eyes wild, and ran at Tomo, claws out. Ellen shot out of her chair and flew at Cynthia, fists clenched, one arm already pulled back. Just before they collided, Alex, with one arm around her waist and the other locking her shoulder tightly to his, spun Cynthia around, away from Ellen and Tomo, and walked her in the opposite direction. Others stepped in, between, separating the two women and calming them down. "Is there any chance of a pot of tea, Pascal?" Mac called out. "Every chance, if you come here and make it yourself," she replied. A few minutes later, Linda and Bindi had worked their calming magic, and everyone was seated, mugs of tea in front of them. The tense atmosphere returned as faces turned to look at Mac. He stood up. A weary expression briefly crossed his face, but he replaced it with one of confidence. "I asked you all, only yesterday, the day of the party, to trust me and wait for me to answer all your questions, but you couldn't do it, could you?" he opened accusingly. "You said you'd tell us later that day," Colin said. Mac rolled his eyes. To emphasise the comment wasn't worth answering. "Yeah, okay, all right. Tonight's just as good," Colin conceded. "Just to say, Mac, me and Lenny, we're right behind you as leader. It's just that—" "For goodness sake, Colin," interrupted Cynthia impatiently. "Let him explain why he's wasting all our fuel." "Cynthia," Mac began, "you were busy in the garden centre on the trip to Lancaster, so you didn't see the people living—" he laced the last word with sarcasm, "in the hotel lobby. But you can ask anyone who was there to back me up." "No need, Mac," Cynthia answered reasonably. "I believe you. But what's that got to do with us?" "Everything," Mac answered emphatically. "Those people are dying. They've given up the fight. They're defeated. And do you know how they came to that? By expecting to scavenge off the old world forever. By not working, like we are, to become self-sufficient, to grow their own food. You know, working for the future. By having no vision, no plan, no—" He paused long enough for the room to look at him, waiting for him to finish. "No leadership." He paused again for emphasis, then continued, brushing off the yes buts that a few had begun. "One day we will have to do without petrol, diesel, gas and all that, and tinned food and tea bags too. But for now we need them. We can't manage without. Hanging on to our tiny store of petrol, in case there's some emergency or for some other excuse, would mean we're resigning ourselves to do without petrol and gas. Don't you see that?" Murmurs of agreement ran around the room. "You know, in all the jobs I worked before, I used to see women managers make stupid decisions like this all the time. Do you know why? Because they daren't take any risks." He paused for emphasis. "I've seen some of you," he nodded at the women, "not have the guts to drive the Land Rover up the hill or get into the river to lift out the fishing nets. Just the other day, one of you couldn't face up to using the chainsaw on the fallen trees." He paused for emphasis. "Chickening out of decisions like these will condemn us all to starve. Have any of you slaughtered any of the sheep?" he challenged. "Or wrung any rabbits' necks? No, we men do that." "I've shot deer and piglets," called out Carol. "And I've shot at a deer," added Jessie, "but didn't hit it." Laughter broke out. "And we need more of you women to step up, because there aren't enough of us men," Mac said. "Now, about those fields and all our vegetables and polytunnels, who of you really believes I intend to let them shrivel up and die? After all our work," he snorted derisively. "We haven't finished all the planting yet. We'll be planting all through the rest of spring and summer. That's right, eh, Alex?" "Right," Alex agreed uncertainly. "And we've been working dawn to dusk to weed and water them, as well as all the rest of it, you know, transplanting, composting, building trellises and—" He paused, raising his palms. "Well, all of you know already. You've been doing it." Groans of agreement told Mac he'd struck a chord. So we're already stretched to breaking, and there'll be more plants coming any day. We can't carry on like that. I've had a list of jobs this long we've had to put on the shelf. How long? Called out Tomo ribaldly. Don't you worry about that. Ali came right back. Mac smiled suggestively and winked at Ali before returning to his subject. We've got to spend less time on those jobs I mentioned, and more on the long-term ones I've been putting off. We will have to reduce some of those jobs Daz has told us we must do, like all the hoeing and weeding. But how, Mac? Cynthia pleaded. And what will happen to the plants when we can't weed and water? I don't know yet, Mac answered. Maybe we'll weed once a week or water when we've had a number of hot days. Maybe we'll hire some Danes and pay them back somehow. There'll be a solution. Perhaps something we haven't thought of before. But what if that's not enough? Cynthia continued, panic sounding in every word. What if we lose the plants? Sounds like you're wanting perfection and guarantees, Cynthia. You can't have them. We'll cross those bridges later. He turned to the rest of the room. Apart from Cynthia, who's still against us? He swung his arm around the group sitting around him. We're with you, Mac. You know what you're doing, Colin said. Lenny agreed with him, and 2 by 2 the room was won. Ha! So now you can go and try out at Gary's farm, Half-Screw spat at Cynthia. No way, Mac said. Most of you were thinking it. She was just the brave one who spoke up. Cynthia's a good worker. We're keeping her. Thanks, Mac. No need. Someone needs to speak up when they see problems I can't anticipate. No one can. Chapter 46. The following morning, they found Half-Screw was nowhere to be found. Tomo and Ellen came down the stairs, shaking their heads. He's not there either. Bed's not been slept in, Ellen said. We've looked everywhere, Tomo added. He wasn't at supper last night, and Tiggy says she didn't see him at lunch. He's gone, mate. Damn, Mac said, and he had a rifle and ammo with him. He'd gone over to the Danes, Tomo spat out. Now, hang on, Ellen put in. He could have had an accident in the woods or anything. Mac looked out of the landing window at the sprawling wood climbing in the hills that began after the Dane settlement. The day was grey with a light wind, but above the northeastern horizon he could see dark clouds, heavy with rain, malevolent and vengeful on their way. He felt an empty, gnawing hole in his stomach. After all he'd done to include and accept Half-Screw, even after he and Ricky had tried to kill him, the squaddy had betrayed him and left. He's been unsettled and unhappy since I killed Ricky, Mac shrugged. Tomo's right, he's gone. Well, he can't just get away with it, Ellen snapped angrily. He's stolen a rifle. We can't just let men clear off when they feel like it. We haven't got enough for a start. Mac shrugged. He's not a prisoner here. None of us are. You know, he made a play for a few of the women here, but no one went with him. You can't blame us for not keeping him here. You don't know what he did, she tailed off. He had a woman over on the Danes' farm, you know, Tomo said. You never told me that, Ellen interrupted sharply. I wonder why, Tomo returned sarcastically. He let it slip when we were hunting deer. You know, he was never one to say much, but he couldn't stop himself telling me this story. He was over there checking out some guns they'd found, but turned out to be beyond mending. Anyway, this little thing kept bringing him tea and cake, laying it on thick. He laughed. He said she made a song and dance about how hot it was in the workshop and took off her jumper. She had just a skimpy little vest on to show how slim she was. She's welcome to him, Ellen snorted, but not our rifle. You know, Tomo added, we got a few guns and a lot of ammo yesterday on our scavenging trip. It won't hurt us to lose that one. Absolutely not, Ellen said sharply. I wouldn't give that wretch a light for his stinking roll-ups." "Oh, no," Tomo said. "I should have. Damn it. He'll have taken those guns I left out in the workshop for him to repair from yesterday's haul. And the blasted ammo. What are we going to do?" "You two carry on with your petrol search. We can't put that off for this," Mac advised. "I'll have to think about how best to handle it." As soon as Tomo and Alex's teams had set off on their quad bikes for a third day's searching, Mac and James got busy building a frame that would support the wind generator through the autumn and winter storms. Before Mac had any time to consider how to respond to half-screw jumping ship with the guns, they heard shouting and high-pitched screaming on the opposite side of the house. "You go round anti-clockwise and don't go rushing in. Take a look at what's happening first. I'll do the same from the other direction. If we're being attacked or anything, meet me at the gun cabinet," Mac instructed. But when they arrived, they could see something else was seriously wrong. The shouts were from Colin, who was being carried half in and half out of a wheelbarrow across the bumpy gravel surrounding the kitchen doors. "Watch out! He's tipping over!" Linda and Cynthia screamed together in panic. "What's happened?" James demanded, almost having to shout to make himself heard. "Colin fell out of a tree and landed on the bow saw," Cynthia answered, her voice filled with fear. "He's bleeding all over the place, and it looks really bad." "Help us get him through the door," Linda called out. "Mac, you and James get the front of the barrow and lift it through. I'll get the door." They lifted the unwieldy barrow over the step and into the kitchen, drawing a cry of pain from Colin as it wobbled. "Sorry, Cole," Cynthia said. "Nearly there now." They finally got him into the room Linda had set up as a clinic and lifted him onto the trestle tables converted into an examining couch. Colin had been attempting to saw off a large broken bough that was threatening to fall onto the path leading to the fields. He'd slipped and lost his balance when one of his downstrokes spun out of the groove and pulled him too far forwards. "No, don't you touch him until you've washed your hands," Linda shouted at Julie. Julie was being trained up, as Linda put it, so she could be an assistant and one day a nurse herself. That day looked to be a long way off. Linda rolled Colin onto his side so she could see the wound. As she pulled up his work shirt, there was a collective intake of breath. The wound was nearly a foot long, going deep into Colin's side and continuing round to his back. Blood matted the sheet beneath him, and white rib bone was visible. Linda looked round when she heard the gasps. "Get out of here, all of you! This isn't ER, and I'm not George Clooney." The crowd turned to leave the clinic. "Hang on, you, Nicola, you can help me too, if you feel up to it." Nicola nodded uncertainly. "It will be good for you, and for all of us actually. Go and wash your hands, then bring me some of those cloths from the box in the corner." Nicola sprang into action. She'd made up her mind to learn. "The rest of you clear out. You're no use to us in here cluttering up the place." Mac and James walked back to the wind generator project. Before midday, Ali came out to them with a tray of hot drinks. "He seems to be doing okay," she told him, "but I'm not sure he can survive that wound. You know, not like this, with no hospitals or proper doctors." Mac sighed. They'd lost people to injuries before, from attacks by the Danes mostly, and once from an accidental discharge when hunting ducks. The injured man, Robbie, had managed to shoot himself in the thigh and knee with a shotgun. This had been when they'd been at the hotel in Lancaster. Although Linda had done everything right, his wound had become infected, and he'd died a miserable, painful death, made barely tolerable by a small amount of painkillers and a lot of whiskey. "He shouldn't have been up there by himself," Ali said. "Bindi said she'd hold the ladder for him, but he got impatient, going on about all the jobs that needed doing. If only he'd waited," she started, before tears and sobs choked her up. Has Linda started him on the antibiotics we got on the last raid, Mac asked. Yes, she did. But between you and me, she thought the ones we brought back weren't that good for his kind of wound. Better for waterworks infections. Chapter 47. Ali walked away to the next work party. Mac and James finished fastening the windmill blade assembly, scavenged from another farm's wind generator. How's your hands? Mac asked. Almost back to normal. It was hard doing nothing for a whole day, but it did the trick. Great. We'll leave this job right here for now. We can attach the alternator another day. It's a waste of daylight until we've laid a cable into the house's main supply. I'll repair the broken roof that the drum crashed through next. They looked up as Linda called to them as she walked over from the clinic. She shook her head as she approached, and they could see her eyes were red. I couldn't stop the bleeding, she said, wiping away a tear. I thought I had, but he couldn't stop turning over, and she fell into Mac's arms, heaving. At least I'd got him comfortable. He didn't die in pain, she said at last. It's good to know we've got painkillers that can handle something even that bad. When afternoon tea was over, Bindi and Anna rinsed out their tea mugs and placed them on the sink. Bindi wiped away a tear, and Anna gave her a hug. I'm so sorry, Bins, she said. I know you started seeing him on the quiet. Bindi took a deep breath and stood up straight. Onward and upward, she said, and walked out of the kitchen. You know, Bindi began, Colin had been planning to move the solar panels into the attic to start fitting them after sawing that branch. Bindi stopped outside the kitchen door. He told me this morning. That'll take 2 of us to do it now. And he'd started to build in the hot water tank above the wood burner. Who's going to finish that? She said angrily. And this afternoon, she continued, he was going to take me and Mandeep and show us how to change the diaphragms on the Calagas bottles and work with the chainsaw. I can't do that by myself. I'm not telling Mac. He'll rub it in about all the things we daren't do on our own. Her lip began to tremble and her face screwed up in despair. There are just too many of those now. Men's jobs, I mean, and not enough men to do them. Don't say it in front of Cynthia or you'll never hear the last of it. But we need to find more men from somewhere. If we don't, she choked back a tear. Why didn't he listen and wait for me, the stupid idiot? She couldn't hold her tears back any longer and collapsed, sobbing, into Anna's arms. Bindi insisted they return to their separate jobs. We've got to keep going. I'll be okay, honest. All right, Anna said, but I'll be there for you tonight, in case you are not. Bindi walked over to Mac as he climbed down the ladder from the broken section of roof. She wiped her face and eyes before she was close enough for him to see. What do you need me to do? She said, keeping the tremor from her voice. I'm going to put all the tools I need in the sling, Mac said. And once I've climbed back up again, I'll drop the end of the rope down for you to tie it on. And the ladder needs moving a yard to the right. Bindi put her hand on Mac's shoulder as he started to climb. We're going to need you to be extra strong today, Mac, she said. You know how some of them are so easily demoralised and give up. Colin, she choked, will be the last straw for some of them. They'll see it as more proof we're all doomed, pointlessly fighting against the rising tide. It feels like the last straw for me too, Bindi, Mac sighed. I wonder if they're right. We take 2 steps forward and... He shook his head in resignation. Colin was less than useless a month ago, and if we'd lost him then who'd have cared? But now, just after he'd become valuable, he said, looking at the ladder's bottom rung. Of course you're hurting too, Bindi said softly, pulling him in for a hug. On top of that, You've got so much pressure on you to stay strong and positive when you don't feel it. She took his face in her hands and kissed him on the cheek. I believe in you. I trust you, Mac. And for what it's worth, I've got your back. I'll defend you. It's worth a lot, Bindi, believe me. I dread the next time they all gang up on me. I feel like telling them to shove it and find another leader if I'm so useless. Bindi nodded. Next time, you need us to stick up for you better. Count on me. Mac didn't appear to have heard. We haven't only lost Colin, but Half-Screw too. 2 men out of 7. I could see he wasn't popular with you girls, but if only one of you had taken him on, he might have stayed. Bindi's face changed. Do you want to know why none of us would go anywhere near Half-Screw, she asked. Mac shrugged. All right. There used to be another girl in the group, back when we were in the hotel, before you came. Tammy, her name was. She hesitated for a moment. Go on, Mac said. She was a pretty thing, mid-20s, I'd say. Blonde hair, nice figure. She'd have snagged a good husband, I'm sure. Of course, we didn't get to know her after... Mac quietly nodded for her to continue. One night, Ricky told her she was going to bed with him, but she refused. Mac gave a low whistle. Yeah, you guessed it. She made it into a real standoff. Anyway, he threatened her, like, if you know what's good for you, but she wouldn't give in. Ricky lost his temper. You know, you've seen it. He was red in the face, totally lost it. She drew in a deep breath, her face colourless. He shouted at Half-Screw to grab her, and together they dragged her into one of the bedrooms. And then they raped her. It was horrible. She was screaming for help, screaming in pain. Bindi had her hands over her face, speech faltering. Oh, God. We could hear what sounded like slaps and punches. None of us dared to go and help her. Tears began falling onto her cheeks. Her voice betrayed her shame and sadness. We knew what they'd do to us if we did. And we must have realised at some point that she'd stopped screaming and crying, not making any noise at all. Max stood silently for a while. And all the rest of you women knew what you'd be risking if you dared refuse him. That's right. And that was the last anyone saw of her. You mean they must have killed her? Max said, shocked. Killed her and dumped her, confirmed Bindi, breaking down and sobbing. That worthless, murdering rapist. You must never have him back again, Mac. Mac climbed to the top of the ladder and stood for a long time, looking at the charred skeleton of the Dutch barn. A gust of wind flapped against the polythene sheet, temporarily covering a hole in the roof. He shook himself out of the daydream and wearily dropped the rope down to Bindi. Chapter 48. Mac had replaced all but 2 rows of the damaged roof tiles. He allowed himself to feel a sliver of pride. The threatening dark clouds had moved off to the north, and the day was now bright and blue. A breeze ruffled his hair as he reached down for a handful of roof tacks, but he paused, cocking his ear to the sound of a quad bike coming down the hostel's track. He shouted down to Ali, who'd taken over from Bindi at the base of the ladder. "Do you hear that?" "Sounds like one of our quads coming back early," she answered. "Early, I'll say. It's only just past midday. What the hell's gone wrong now?" He spluttered, sliding down the ladder and running over to the gate. But before he reached it, Tomo's broad smile stopped him. "You'll never guess what," Tomo shouted, excitement raising his voice to a shriek. "We've hit the motherlode. We'll be sitting pretty after this, you wait." "Motherlode," Mac answered with anticipation. "What did you find? Fuel?" "Yeah," Tomo gasped, overcome. Oh, Mac, you just won't believe. He shrugged, unable to find the words. What won't I believe? Mac asked, frustrated now. For goodness sake, is it really worth all this fuss? Let him catch his breath, Ali said, as she caught up with them. Ellen climbed over the gate and hugged Ali, shaking with excitement. We did find fuel, and plenty of it, but that's not all. She hugged Ali again. Relief and elation combined made her trip over her words. She took a breath to centre herself. I'd been so worried we'd waste all that petrol on nothing. And then people would be ganging up on Mac and getting all hopeless and arguing again. But no need to worry now. Tom had a brilliant idea. She brought out the map from inside her barber. Which was? Mac pressed. Hurry up and tell us, will you? We worked out a different route to those villages and farms on our list. It took us to this junction. She dabbed it with her forefinger. As you can see, it's not that far from the A road. And not far along from where we joined it, it becomes a dual carriageway. Riveting, Mac said witheringly. But what did you find? I hope it's worth you coming back this soon, so giddy you can barely speak. Don't mind him, Ali reassured Ellen. He's like this whenever he gets frustrated, or can't get there quick enough. You should see his face when he's about to, you know. Ali, please, Mac said, embarrassed. Anyway, Ellen continued, red-faced. Just before it becomes a dual carriageway, there's a long lay-by for lorries. You never found, Ali began, but Ellen cut her off. We did. Whatever you were about to say, we found it. A petrol tanker and lorries with trailers full of food. We can stop searching right now. Those finds will keep us fed and fueled for, well, I don't know how long. A year? Yeah, Tomo said, composed at last. The gas could last a year or more, easily. Depends how full the tanker is. Wouldn't it be full if it was making a delivery, Tom? Ellen asked. Hope so. Tomo nodded. When they're full, they hold more than 2,000 gallons. That'll fill up our tanks many times over. Shame it won't be any use for the Land Rover, Mac said, shaking his head. Honestly, Mac, you are hard work today. Talk about pouring cold water on us, Ellen scolded. There were more trailers of food than we had chance to open, Tomo said. And there'll be more tankers abandoned on the road. One of them will have diesel, not petrol. And now we've got the fuel to go searching until we find one, Ellen pointed out. We should pick up some trial bikes if we can find any, Tomo said. They'll be economical as. We can scavenge far and wide on a trial bike. All three chatted excitedly about what the find would mean for them. Max stood apart, listening, his eyebrows working like busy centipedes. Ali was the first to notice his silence and turned to him. Hun? She said, puzzled. I was just figuring it out in my head, hoping it wasn't just another false dawn. A big smile creased his face. It's not. Sorry for being so negative before. I'm as pleased as you all are, honestly. Just not good at showing it, Ali reassured him, reaching up to plant a loving kiss on his mouth. Thing is, Mac, Tomo began, we came back early, not just because we were so stoked, but because if we crack on, we might get one of those trucks running and drive it back here. For the rest of the afternoon, after loading up the Land Rover with tools and charged batteries, they worked on two of the lorries, a tanker and a truck with a trailer with a supermarket logo. It was filled with pallets, some of them useful, like unperishable food and cleaning products, some useless in the new world. Bindi and Ellen went through the trailer, discarding items that had become rotten or were of no use. Just carry them back and put them on the tail lift, Bindi shouted to Ellen. I'll throw everything in the bushes over there. Milk that had turned solid, along with packets of nappies, bottles of flavoured French water, celebrity magazines, and boxes of blank CDs began piling up in the bush-lined ditch alongside the A road. At last the two women agreed that they'd finished and everything useful had been retained. About 1/3 of the contents of the originally full trailer remained. Tomo and Mac stood back from one of the tractor units. "Go on then," Mac urged. "You did most of the graft. You give it a spin." "It should work," Tomo said, uncertainty in his tone. "Okay, here goes." The engine spluttered and then roared into life. Tomo gunned the accelerator, producing clouds of black smoke and cheers from the two women. Every toff crowded around the trailer as soon as it pulled into the yard. Tomo had honked the horn in excitement from about halfway up the lane, and everyone had dropped whatever they'd been doing. Ellen and Bindi made a show of opening the doors like a magician's sequin-clad assistant to reveal their discovery. Gasps of delight broke out at the richness of the treasure. "Is all that rice unspoiled? That'll last us months if it is." "Are those tins of steak and kidney puddings?" "Yes, and sponge pudding and custard too." "Any French wine?" Pascal inquired. "Or café?" "No alcohol in this load," Bindi answered sadly, "but there are more supermarket trailers further along the A road. Fingers crossed." Cynthia climbed up in the trailer with a torch and peered at the pallets. After a minute, she made a shriek of delight. "What is it?" asked Bindi. "Paprika powder and heaps more herbs and spices. I could cook us all goulash. That was the first meal my mum taught me to cook. At last we've got more than the chilies from the polytunnels." Mac pulled Tomo's sleeve. A broad smile covered his face. "Motherlode, all right," he said. "Those girls will be fighting each other to get in the kitchen first. You two saved my bacon when you found those trailers." "Go on with you." Tomo batted away the compliment. "It was just a matter of time. It's always been out there, waiting for someone to take the trouble to find it. It was your idea to send us out." Mac shrugged uncomfortably, shaking his head. "Anyway, before it gets dark, we're going to Gary's to get those guns back off Half Screw. Go get James and meet me at the bike shed."